Okie doke.
Is another fun edition of the Importer's Quarter. And I have to say, this has been kind of like a secret passion of mine, because our Vino Shades of Vino Wine Club is structured differently. And I'm always excited, even though this has only been the second time, to pick the wines that you have, because it's a way for me, I'm not as familiar with those regions, but it's a way for me to explore those regions because I'm not. And with ours, like, we vary from different regions and have different themes. So I'm excited about the Importer's Quarter and trying the wines myself and enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm very excited about this. This is a project that we wanted to start years ago, but couldn't because we didn't have a way to ship to people, well, us at all. And then even we didn't really have a partner that we could ship to the states that we don't have markets in. So I would have friends and family in New York and other places like, I really want to buy a bottle of wine from you. And I was like, well, too bad. You can't, unfortunately. So Importer's Quarter was founded partially to be able to do that, but then also to just highlight some like hidden gems in my portfolio that aren't these wines that sell at a a larger scale. To highlight some things that I might put on sale a little bit because it's that time of year we're switching vintages, and then to showcase some wines that are brand new to the market that nobody has had yet, which one of the wines that we're doing tonight, that is the case. So I'm very excited that we have a few new members as well. And I've got new products coming in this year, so we'll be able to share those as well moving forward. So thank you, Leslie, for being a partner who can ship almost everywhere in the US and who allows me to share these wines with people in a broader region than where I have a distributor partner.
No problem. And so we hope the wines went out earlier this month in June. And so we hope that people have had an opportunity to, open a bottle or two. And we got your feedback from our last virtual tasting, which was really helpful. And so we decided to, instead of trying to go through all 4 wines in a sitting, we have a whole quarter, so let's split it up. So we're going to do 2 wines tonight, and then we have a second recording on, and please join us if you're able to, on June 27th to go through the other 2 wines. And we're always open for the feedback. So, Alyssa, would you like to introduce what we're trying tonight?
Yes. So this is our Silvermine Rosé from Zorgvliet Wine Estate. This is a really fun rosé, but also just meant to be not a crazy serious wine. Easy drinker, something you can sip on the porch, bring to the pool, bring on your boat, bring on a picnic, that sort of thing. This is a wine that I've worked with now since, I want to say like about 2019, 2018. The importer for this winery was someone else in the DC region who I won't mention, was doing really well with this brand in particular. And my local distributor, Global Wines Maryland, sold it. That importer went out of business. They were left without a US importer for the brand. And they had asked me, would I take it over? So I did. And it was the first winery, the only winery that I work with where I haven't actually visited the property. The intent was that I was going to visit in 2020, which obviously did not happen, but I'm very happy to say I will be going this August. So after that, I'll have an even better understanding of the place, the people, the terroir, and what goes into the bottle. But just a little intro on Silvermine from Zorgvliet Wine Estate. Zorgvliet is Afrikaans for no worries. So they are trying to make wine feel a little bit less intimidating for folks by having a name like that, having a name like No Worries. Now, at Zorgvliet, they've decided to only grow wine varietals, or rather grape varietals, that are also grown in the Bordeaux region of France. Now, with climate with climate change, what you can grow is changing. And I'm not knowledgeable about what's going on there in Bordeaux to know if we've made those changes yet. But traditionally, you could grow Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and I'm forgetting one.
Merlot.
If I went
Merlot,
right? Because no one's heard of Merlot. That's a tough grape. So those were your 5 red grapes, and then for white grapes, you could grow Sauvignon Blanc or Semillon. So that's what's grown at Zorgfleet. And our rosé here is made with Cabernet Franc, sometimes 100% Cabernet Franc. Sometimes they blend a small amount of Semillon in. In South Africa, if it's less than 15% of a different grape, you don't have to write it on the label. So for folks who have this bottle in their hand right now, it'll say Cabernet Franc on the back. There could be a small amount of Semillon. It's just not legally required to put it on the bottle. Before we go into the wine, I want to talk about the label a little bit. Yes, it's pretty. It's a flower. That's great. That definitely helped with sales. But it is South Africa's protea flower. The protea is the national flower of South Africa. It grows all over the place. Just like Maryland has black-eyed Susans as the state flower, the protea is South Africa's flower. In addition to the flower, we have a few birds on here. We have an ostrich, which people probably have heard of, and they are also alive and well in Africa. But then the white bird that's on the outer border, this is a secretary bird, which may almost sound like kind of a sexist name at this point, but this bird is not to be messed with. It's a little smaller than an ostrich, but about that size, so it's quite big. And unlike ostriches, it is carnivorous and kills and eats king cobras. It is strong enough with its feet that it can break a human's foot. So this is like a bad A bird over here that you do not want to mess with. And then finally on the label, we have the woman who designed the label, who designed herself as kind of like a deity or a goddess on this side here. So pretty label, but has a bit more meaning as well. Can
I just say something about the label for a second? So we had, before we had the rosé, we had the red blend. And one of our partners, she has an Airbnb, and so we provide wine for them. And so she had this caterer, and like big burly guy, former Commanders player, what have you. And she said to him, "Oh, that's the lady who provided the wine." And he goes, "Oh my goodness, that was so amazing." And I was like, in my head thinking, well, which one is he talking about? And he goes, "The one with the beautiful flower on it." So it's so striking. Like that's what stood out to him. He loved the wine, but that was like always a major descriptor when people are talking about these labels because they're so eye-catching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I want to point out on the rosé, if you've got the bottle, it says 2022 on the back. Rosé is challenging when you work in the wine industry because it is a wine that everybody wants at the most current vintage, which would be 2023 for this bottle. But here's the thing, the wine is perfectly fine. It's not past peak. This is a wine that's meant to be drank young. It's not a wine that you have a glass of necessarily throughout the week. Like it doesn't have a long shelf life once open. But I just took a sip. I smelled it before we started. It's got great aromas. It's got like a strawberry, watermelon, cotton candy thing going on. Great acidity, which is a sensation you kind of feel back here.
Wow.
It's delicious. It's refreshing. It's just not a wine for saving. It's not necessarily a wine that you're, like I said, the bottle life itself will be shortened a little bit just because it is slightly older. But the reason I wanted to put it in is one, it's summer. It's a great time for parties. It's a great time for sharing wine with friends. It's hot. You want something crisp, clean, easy drinking. But because of the vintage, I cut my prices on this, which allowed me to sneak in 2 wines into the wine club that are at a higher price point that maybe wouldn't have fit into our club price otherwise. So it's a fun way to, still a great wine. It shouldn't be on sale, to be perfectly honest, but because of the wine industry, I needed to put it on sale, and that let me sneak in some other really great stuff.
I think it's also very on trend now. with Cab Franc. I mean, Cab Franc for a long time was this very strong supporting cast. Unless you were in the wine industry or you were a super wine geek, you really didn't know about Cab Franc. You just heard about Cab Sauv. And so now that Cab Franc is coming to the forefront, you also see it a lot in the Mid-Atlantic region. So I think it's cool that you see this in South Africa. It just makes a great rosé. The color is beautiful because it's such a deep, inky type of grape, and you get so much flavor off of it. So, you saying that about having the latest vintage, I was like, oh, this is great. It's a 2022. Like, I personally didn't think anything of it. I just thought that, oh, this is a great wine to have over the summer. Yeah.
Yeah. And you are not alone. I poured this at an industry event, a wine industry event at the South African Embassy a few weeks ago. And I mean, we had very famous South African winemakers there, Tanache Kamusha, Nitsiki Bayela. We had Julia Coney in town, which was fabulous to see her. And everyone's like, yeah, this is great. Like, what's the deal with everybody? So don't judge a rosé by its age necessarily.
Right. 100%.
Just like don't judge your importer by their age, All right. Should we pop over to the next one? Because I am very excited to share this. I am going to Coravin this one. So if anybody doesn't know, Coravin is a way to just make a wine bottle last a little bit longer by sealing off the bottle with argon gas. So I'm not going to drink this bottle tonight or this weekend. Actually, my mom's coming. Maybe we will open it anyway. But I really just want to have a sip for the tasting. And then I don't want the bottle to no longer be usable for me to go out into the market, use for samples, etc. So that's why I'm using the Coravin. But this is our red Reserva from Quinta da Devesa. Quinta da Devesa is a winery who I introduced in the first quarter's wine club. Yes. We had the white wine. This is their red wine. Now, this is kind of unique because it's the Douro Valley in Portugal, more famous for port wine, right? Like folks think of Portugal, or rather they think of the Douro, they think of ports. But more and more people, Devesa included, are really spending some time. We forgot to do the slideshow from Zorgfleet, didn't we?
We did.
Why don't we do that real quick? Yeah.
Okay.
There's just a few photos. So Zorgfleet Wine Estate is it's a venue in South Africa. It's not just like a winery or a farm. They have obviously a beautiful property. They're up in the mountains. They have a hotel. They have a restaurant, the works. So these are all the Zorgfleet photos are all going to be professional photos that I got from the winery. When we get over to Quinta da Devesa, they're a bit of a smaller production, not so many employees, very much a family-owned farm. You'll see the photographs are not quite so professional because I think the majority of them I took. But did we have any others of Zorgfleet? I can't remember that one. I
think so. That we have this one, but this is weird. Hold on.
Yeah, the images aren't showing for some reason.
Yeah, it's the because it has a beautiful sunset. I'm not sure why it's not showing on this because I can see part of it.
Yeah, it works on my PDF. I'll try a different format next time.
Okay.
That's okay. We'll bop over it. We'll just go back to the Reserva. There we go. Yeah, so you can see I removed the Coravin, and then hopefully when I turn this upside down, no wine leaks out. We're good. So that's one of the advantages of the Coravin. So going back to Quinta da Devesa. So again, Douro, Portugal, port wines, right? But here we have a non-fortified red wine. Last time we had a non-fortified white wine. In the last 20 or so years, the owners of Devesa have really put an emphasis on their non-fortified program. Historically, they were a port producer, but unlike some of the more famous port producers, Dow's, Graham's, Taylor, they have been Portuguese owned since 1944. A lot of Portuguese farmers sold off their land in the Douro Valley when phylloxera, which we're not going to go into, but a pest that destroyed vineyards, had destroyed the vineyards in Portugal. The Portuguese farmers just didn't have the money to hold on to land that wasn't producing anything that brought cash in. Not Europeans, people from the UK, Brits were so in love with port, and there were business people, oh, let's be real, businessmen who had the money to buy that land from the Portuguese and then continue on with the production of these port houses. So if you are to travel to Portugal and you are standing in Porto and you look across the river, there's a town called Via Nova de Gaia, and that's where a lot of our big famous port houses are. Sandeman, Ramos Pinto, which is a Portuguese name, again, Dow, Taylor, etc. In Portugal, you were not allowed to sell your port under your family farm name unless you had a cellar there in Via Nova de Gaia. Quinta da Devesa never did. So they could only sell their port to the bigger houses, to the bigger producers. That was how they made their money. They couldn't bottle it as Quinta da Devesa. When Portugal joined the EU, which was, I believe, in 1986, that law changed and they started selling their ports under Quinta da Devesa. As they grew a reputation in Portugal and eventually abroad for having these gorgeous ports, they were able to focus more on their on their non-fortified wine production, which is something owner Elena Fortunato is very passionate about, and she's very passionate about her vineyards. So today we're tasting the there's Elena. Today we are tasting the Reserva Red, brand new, landed in the States, I believe just in May, was picked up by my distributor specifically for Importer's Corner and went out to you all on it. Essentially, you are the first people in the States beyond myself and Ian to taste this wine. Now, I just want to go into a little bit what Reserva means. On the bottle, you'll see it says Quinta da Devesa Douro Reserva, Tinto, meaning red, and then red in English. Reserva means different things in different countries. So in Spain, it has to do with the age of the wine. For example, I believe a Crianza is 1 year in barrel, 2 years in bottle, and then a Reserva will be 3 total years, one of which has to be in barrel. In Portugal, there's not those age requirements. It's simply a quality requirement. So if you make a wine and you're like, wow, this is really good, I think this should be a Reserva, you send it essentially to the board in that region who tastes the wine, assesses, and determines if the quality level's there. They say yes, you get to put Reserva on your label. If they don't, it's just going to be a red Douro wine. So that's what Reserva means in this part of Portugal. And there is some variability in the different regions.
Loved it.
Yeah. So very cool. I used to carry the non-Reserva wine. It was fantastic, but with tasting this, I just found that it was like with their other wine, it was like, okay, quality, price. With this, I feel like we are like quality, price. So it was just so, if this wine was from Napa Valley, I think it would retail at $60 easily.
Yeah.
So this is a blend. Yeah, go ahead, Leslie.
Oh, no, what I was going to say is it's still a fairly young wine. And so this is definitely something that you could lay down for a few years and it just is going to get better in the bottle. This is not one of those you should drink immediately in the next 3 years. No, I think you could keep this on in your wine fridge, in your cellar. You could cellar it for a while and it will continue to open up.
I agree. So in 2020, they sent me samples of the current vintage, which was 2013. We opened a bottle in the last couple of months and it was still it was still fresh. It definitely showed some of those like lovely signs of aging, but I think it's a wine that even could have gone further. I do like this now. It's a 2019, but I don't decant a lot of wines. It's a pain in the ass to clean, to be perfectly honest, but I will decant wines that are a bit young and need some air,
Mm-hmm.
or very old wines that are likely throwing sediment, and I'll do that to
Yeah.
prevent it from getting in the glass. But this is one I think you can enjoy now, but it needs some air. If you don't have a decanter, industry trick, pour a little out, stick the cork back in really well, and then shake it, and that aerates it as well. But this is a blend. Blends are traditional in Portugal. It goes back to the history of something called a field blend, where essentially all the different grapes would just grow together and we made booze out of it and everybody had a good time. Now, today in Portugal, they have separate vineyards for separate grapes. There are still some higher end field blends where the wineries just feel, wow, this is producing really good stuff. We're not touching it until the vines are no longer producing. Devesa does have a field blend wine, but the idea behind a field blend wasn't necessarily quality. It was more just producing quantity. So Portugal has kind of embraced that tradition, but also embraced innovation by now having separate vineyards with separate grapes. You pick them separately, you ferment them separately, you age them separately, and then you blend them. So that way you can be particular, like, ooh, this is a little more tannic than I want. Like, I don't want that. Let's add a little bit more of this grape to soften it, that sort of thing. And then you can have consistency year to year, even if the weather is different, you have a better quality product. So here it's going to be Portuguese grapes. And thankfully, the red grapes, not all of them, but the ones here are a little bit easier to say than some of the white grapes. So we have Touriga Nacional, which is like kind of the king of Portuguese grapes, maybe the one people are most familiar with it. You planted across the country in Portugal. You're seeing it a little bit in other countries actually too. There's some Touriga down in South Africa. It has some flavors like Cabernet Sauvignon, but it's not the tannin structure that you get from a cab. Another grape is Tinto Ruiz, which is Tempranillo. So if you drink Spanish wine, you might be familiar with Tempranillo. And then now I forget, so I'm looking at my sheet. Touriga Franca, which is sort of comparable to Merlot, and Tinta Barbacoa, which I've never had as a single varietal, so I'm not as familiar with it. This is a wine in Portugal that you'd probably have with a bigger meal. So maybe a slow roasted lamb, traditional baby goat, which they call, oh, I know how to say goat in Spanish. What is it in Portuguese? Cabrito asado, I believe. And this is something that you would have with a meal like that. I also think it would be nice with like roast beef, or something like a red meat that comes off the grill. Or for vegetarian folks, I would definitely head towards mushroom. I'm making tonight I'm not vegetarian. Oddly, I'm making a vegetarian dish with chickpeas, tomatoes, mushrooms, and an Iraqi dish that I think this would go really well with, even though I'm not going to drink it because it's too special and I'm really tired. But here we have the land at Quinta da Devesa. This is actually a photo that I took. The trees lining the ridge there are used for boundary markers. So instead of putting up fences, they'll put up trees. Those are olive trees. They do produce olives. The winery does make olive oil, but just for family use. They don't have a large enough production for commercial use. The mist rising up below, that's the Douro River down there. So we are at a bit of elevation here, which is great for the wine because it gets cooler at night. So the wine stays fresher and you preserve these like aromatics and kind of like almost floral aromas that you get in the wine.
Do they have an issue with natural predators? Like, do they use netting to, because I noticed you said that there isn't fencing, they use the trees as natural fencing.
Not
Do you know?
there. I haven't heard about that in Portugal at all, as far as like
Mm-hmm.
birds coming. Up in the Douro, I mean, it's pretty steep, so you're not going to have a ton of like larger mammals or even critters that will cause problems. You mostly have birds, bees, butterflies, flying insects, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. In this part of the Douro, Devesa, all of the work is done by hand or by horse. You can't bring a tractor through here. It's just too steep. It would be too dangerous. Yeah. There is actually a man who owns a team of horses who are some of the few horses who can walk backwards on inclines. So the wineries will rent his time basically, and he'll go through and like help with tilling in the in the winter and growing season.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And is the family still the majority owner of the vineyard and the winery?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I believe right now I'm not quite sure if they're siblings or some cousins that blend, but there are 5 members of the family who are kind of co-owners of the vineyard, and they have gone through some rotation. So somebody decided they wanted to step down and kind of take a lesser role. Someone else stepped up. So for the past, I don't know how many, but few years, Elena Fortunato has been the owner. She's also the viticulturalist. So she does a lot of the work in the vineyard. She's very dedicated to environmental practices and has actually tried different, like you can see in between the vines. This is in December. There's green kind of moss-like grass growing. She has found some kind of grass that is it perennial? Perennial, comes back year to year, and then also flowers. So it's not something that they're having to pull up and replant. It's something that can have a strong life in the vineyard and can add biodiversity to the vineyard. And then also importantly in the Douro, prevents erosion.
I could see that happening. I could definitely see that happening. It's absolutely beautiful. And if this is the winter, I can't imagine what the summer looks like.
Yeah, it is. It is stunning. I recommend hiring a driver if you go out yourself.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah, the roads are very, very windy.
One slide I did not. Is this the same vineyard, just from a different? It looks.
That is the south-facing vineyard. No. That is the north-facing vineyard. So you actually have Spain in the distance. It's just completely covered by the clouds and the fog. So that's where they grow their white grape varietals.
Okay. It also, what was very striking when I first opened the bottle, I didn't carbon mine, I was sharing it. It's got an amazing nose on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got and it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm keep on going back, and it's just
yeah. And I don't mean this in any way to say that one is better than the other. This is for drinking. This is for thinking.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Would not give this to a friend who's going to pound it in a solo cup. If this, share away.
Yes.
I stole that from Rob Garrettson. That's his little thing.
It is. It's and a lot of the meals that you were talking about, like our heavy stew meals or what have you, like really hearty meals or what. This is a meal that you could serve at Thanksgiving, but I would not, because everyone around the table would not have an appreciation for it. So I would just keep for my closest wine lover friends.
Exactly. Yeah. Or for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. This is a bottle that if you open, this will be fine for multiple days open. Not weeks without the Corvin process, but you can open this guy, have a glass tomorrow, have a glass the next day, the day after that. There's going to be a lot more life on it because it's made with oxygen interaction. It's aged in oak. It's used to oxygen versus the Rosé. They kind of minimize the oxygen interaction. You open it, it's like, oh, what's happening? And then it starts to change. This will keep a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
Well, Leslie, that is all I have, but
I was going to ask you if there's anything else you had to add. No, I don't have anything else.
Ma'am. I think that's good. And next time we'll do another white and another red, this time South African. And I think that both are gorgeous examples of, I don't want to say typical, a good example of a white and a good example of a red that you can expect from South Africa to really showcase what that land is about, what South Africa is about.
It's a good profile of their wines. Well, thank you for spending time with me, and hopefully we'll see the club members in a couple of weeks.
Yep. All right.
And
well,
have a great evening.
You too. Cheers.
Cheers.